Welcome to the Richard Sherman Podcast. Hit that sub button if you're new. We're here to give you great NFL content. Please tune in. Welcome back to the Richard Sherman Podcast, and this is what it's all about. Super Bowl week, the finality, the final. And Mitchell, we have two great teams in the Philadelphia Eagles and, of course, Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, back at it again. What you think about this game? They got the Chiefs 1.5-point favorites. I think that's about right.
Whether you're sick of them or not, Patrick Mahomes is back in it again, and Vegas likes him to win his third consecutive Super Bowl. Richard, this Eagles team is feisty. They got the best total defense in the league. Kansas City's looked more like Kansas City of late. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Because Kansas City has not allowed a single 100-yard rusher in the last 18 playoff games, and that is Philadelphia's claim to fame. I mean, they're going to trot Saquon Barkley out there and try to run him consecutively as much as they can.
I don't think Kansas City's going to allow another 100-yard rusher for their 19th straight game. There's a reason. It's not by luck. This is schematic. And Spags has done an incredible job since he's been there of stopping the run and really pigeonholing these offenses to play kind of left-handed. When they played the Philadelphia Eagles in 2022 in the Super Bowl, he said, hey, we're not going to let you run this football. Jalen Hurts is going to have to beat us. And Jalen Hurts almost beat him. He threw for 300 yards, a touchdown. He ran for 71 yards, had a heck of a game. If it wasn't for that fumble and scoop and score and, a couple iffy calls, we could be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles as the Super Bowl champions that year. And, the Kansas City Chiefs being a different, speaking about them a little differently than we are right now. But I think Spags is going to continue to put pressure on this team and try to have Jalen Hurts. And I know I said this, Eagles fans are going to be frustrated with me saying, oh man, Jalen Hurts played fantastic in the last Super Bowl. These two teams played, threw for 300 yards, had one of his best games of his career on the biggest stage. He's going to have to do that again if you're going to beat the two-time back-to-back champs. You're going to beat Andy Reid. You're going to beat Spags. And I know this Philadelphia defense has been phenomenal all season long. They're number one in total defense, number one in pass defense, second in scoring defense. You are not getting easy yards there. But Patrick Mahomes is 17-3 in the playoffs in general, 50 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, 105 passer rating, and he didn't do anything crazy, incredible. The last time these two teams played in the Super Bowl, that was when they had this D-line that was really formidable. They had a really good secondary. A lot of the pieces are still there. I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson was there. I think Slay was there. Obviously, Jalen Carter is there's some new faces on the defensive line, younger faces, younger guys. Nolan Smith has been a menace in these playoffs. Nakobe Dean, who's been injured, isn't going to play, but Oren Burks has played really phenomenal in his stead. You got to give him a lot of credit. Zach Bond is a Pro Bowler, All-Pro this season. He's going to be a difference maker for this team. And then you got the young guys, Quinyon Mitchell, Quintanamo Bay has played incredible all season long. Really confident for a rookie. Blankenship, it does a great job back there, and Cooper DeJean in the nickel and with the punt returns is an impact player. But when you're playing Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to take what you can give them. We played against them. And when we played against them, and this was a long time ago in 19 when Patrick was young, we had them. I thought we had them beat. We held them to 10 points all the way until 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then, bang, 21 unanswered, game. And so you have to understand this is a championship team with championship medal and championship hunger. And they're going to be they're not going to go quietly into this night. So people thinking this is going to be a 2-score game, a 3-score, anything like that, you're confused. This is going to be a really close game that's going to come down to the last drive. And I know both fan bases know how it's going to go. If it comes down to Patrick Mahomes with the ball, 2 minutes or so left in the game, and they're down 3, that story's been written quite a few times, Mitchell. But if the Philadelphia Eagles can control the clock, run the football with Saquon Barkley, run for over 100 yards on the ground, they can win this game. No question about it. They cause some turnovers on defense, and there is a great path. This is a great team. They can win this game, but it's just really tough to beat the champs, Mitchell.
The reality is, I mean, Philly had this team in their first Super Bowl matchup. Nick Bolton really swung the momentum because it looked like the Eagles were going to go up multiple scores early in that game and really take control. So, I mean, you look at this Eagles team, and they've been quietly dominant all season. I mean, they really haven't lost a game since week 4 with a healthy Jalen Hurts. Let's keep in mind the last time they lost this season was against the Commanders, and that was with Kenny Pickett taking over early on into that game. So, I mean, this team, they're built the right way, but it seemed that they were so nervous about letting Jalen Hurts do his thing, and they were handing the ball off to Saquon a lot, and you saw A.J. Brown and the receivers start to get a little unsettled, with some of these play calls. Like, if this Kansas City Chief defense is going to stymie Saquon Barkley, like you say, what's it going to take for Jalen Hurts to come away with a win here? Because as you mentioned, he had over 300 yards in their last Super Bowl meeting. Do you think he's capable of replicating that?
Yeah, he's definitely capable. I mean, at times, last game against the Commanders, he was asked to take the ball in his hands. He delivered some great passes in the red zone, an out route that was a dime, a few seams. Like, he can deliver the ball, but I think that's the best case scenario for the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's what they're going to bank on. Like, they're going to bank on Jalen Hurts. Hey, he can have a good game. We have to be stout in the red zone. We have to give him. You're not just going to stop A.J. Brown. You're not just going to stop Devontae. Devontae Smith had over 100 yards in their last Super Bowl. Obviously, these are two different teams, and I know all that's different. A.J. Brown had 96 yards in that game. Jalen Hurts was their leading rusher with 71 yards, threw for 300 yards. Like, again, you can't stop. Their offensive line is too good. You're not going to be able to stop everything about this team. Their receiver core is too good. Dallas Goedert is a really good player in his own right. So you have to take away something. And I think that's what made the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick really effective. It's not like, hey, we're going to stop everything they do. We're going to stop what they do best, and then we'll deal with what else they do. And so right now, what they do best is running the football. Saquon Barkley, over 2,400 yards on the season, including the playoffs. You have to find a way to stymie him. And I think that's what they've done. I mean, you just look at the history of Spags in this Kansas City Chiefs team. Like you said, 18 straight games holding runners under 100 in the playoffs. That's not by accident. And so is Saquon Barkley different? No question about it. Is he having an incredible year? No question. Will he break a run? If he doesn't, I'd be really, really surprised, because this offensive line is still really good, and he's still one of the best backs in the National Football League, if not the best running back in the National Football League. So he's going to get his. If he breaks over 100, is that a guaranteed win for the Philadelphia Eagles? It's not, because in the last Super Bowl, they won the time of possession. I think the Kansas City Chiefs only had the ball 24 minutes in that entire game and still found a way to win because of those turnovers and because of that Nick Bolton scoop and score. It was a high-scoring game. I don't think this is going to be that high-scoring of a game, because I think both of these defenses are going to make huge plays in this game, and it's going to come down to who can make less mistakes, who gets the big turnover. Does the Philadelphia Eagles defense create the turnover that Nick Bolton created in the last Super Bowl? Is it Jalen Carter coming through in the clutch, which he did against the Rams? Hey, he ruined that drive. If he doesn't make that sack, it looked like they had a receiver open over the middle of the field that could have potentially won the Rams that ball game. So if you look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, they have all the talent on both sides of the ball to get this win. But the Kansas City Chiefs have won, and they've won close games all season long. We talked about it. They could have easily missed the playoffs with some of the games that if they would have lost. If some of those one-score games would have went the other way, they could have been a 7-8 win team. But they found a way to win almost every single one of those games. And that's why in those moments, they're calm. Their demeanor is calm. Their execution is there. Ever since they moved Joe Thuney to tackle, they've been better on the offensive line. They've been, Caliendo's done fine at left guard, and they've done a great job. It's been a different offensive line because they've been so weak on the edges. That's where people have attacked them, and that's where I would expect Philly to attack them. But now, do you switch him back because Jalen Carter is in the middle? Do you switch Thuney back to guard because Jalen Carter is a handful? We'll see.
Well, Richard, you were talking about the big matchup, Saquon Barkley. If you're Steve Spagnuolo, how are you coaching this game? I mean, you want to take a guy like Saquon out. What are you doing stylistically to take him out of the game? I mean, obviously, you can only hope to contain him. But if you're trying to contain Saquon Barkley, what do you expect to see out of the Kansas City Chiefs defense?
Penetration. I think it's going to come down to Chris Jones, and they're going to move him around. Obviously, Saquon has done his damage inside, outside, on the edges, through the middle. Like, it's not like he can only do one thing. He does a lot of things well. So it's not like it's an easy answer where you're like, hey, we got to stop the tosses, or we got to stop the outside zone. We got to stop the wide zone. He can do it all. And their offensive line is really formidable. They have a really good center. They have two really good tackles. They got really good guards. They're pretty stout everywhere. And so it's where can you get your matchups and your wins? They're going to need penetration, and they're going to need to tackle well. This defense has tackled well historically. That's one of their biggest strengths is they tackle well as a group. Justin Reid and those safeties are going to have to be involved in this game. Nick Bolton, who, again, made the play in the last Super Bowl these teams played, is going to have to play a big role. Karlaftis is going to have a big game. Those guys, it's going to come down to the Jimmies and Joes. Spags' scheme is going to be what it is. They're going to keep men in the box. They're going to blitz. I mean, you saw how he handled the Buffalo Bills. They're going to blitz. They're going to bring pressure. They're going to bring a lot of pressure. And I think he's going to blitz into a lot of these runs if he can. He puts a lot of pressure on himself to put the guys in the perfect play to stop these guys. So again, from everything we're hearing from the Kansas City Chiefs and their players, Spags has a really incredible mind and does a great job getting these guys in position. I expect that to be the same. It's not by luck that these guys haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher in 18 games. On the flip side, Vic Fangio has never beat Patrick Mahomes. And so that's something that is a bit concerning because it's not like it's one or two games. It's Patrick Mahomes is 18-0 versus Vic's defenses. And that's a number of places Vic has been. Now, this may be one of the most talented defenses that Vic has had in the National Football League, but I don't know. That those 49ers defenses were pretty good. But that's going to be another matchup to watch. Like, do Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes just have answers for Vic's scheme? They just have never lost to him. So that's a storyline that'll be in play. Hey, if there's going to be one win that you want to have, it's going to be the Super Bowl. So if he's 8-1 and Vic wins the Super Bowl and beats him in the Super Bowl, I think Vic would be very happy walking away with that win. But yeah, I think they're going to do what they've always done. You know, they're going to move Chris Jones around, just like when they stopped Josh Allen on the tush push. They changed where Chris Jones was. They said, hey, Josh Allen likes to go through the A gap on the left side. That's exactly where they put their strength at. And so those are the small adjustments that they make in game. And I think they'll do the same thing. I think they'll double A.J. Brown at times in third down situations. I think Jalen Watson will do okay on him. I think he'll do fine. But A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown. He's going to get his. He's going to be able to win that. And Jalen Hurts, I mean, you saw him last week against Lattimore, 4th and 5. They went to the A.J. Brown on the fade route. Jalen Hurts put a great ball on him. It's a great win. That's a ballsy play. That's a really, really, in a big game to say, hey, our guys are better than your guys. We're just going to drop back and throw a fade ball. This ain't high school, Mitchell. This is the National Football League and an NFC Championship. And that's the play they ran. So that talks to the confidence they have in the relationship and the chemistry of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. So we'll see how Spags and Vic handle this, because I'm excited to see that, you know, the X's and O's, the chess match of it.
You're a defensive guru. I mean, let's say you're strapping them up on Sunday, getting prepared to play in the Super Bowl. Who would you fear less coming out of that tunnel to be your opponent, this Eagles offense or this Kansas City Chiefs offense?
Fear less, Mitchell. I don't. Yeah, when you get to the Super Bowl,
you don't fear anybody, Rich.
Anybody.
Who would you be less concerned by to be opposing?
That's a tough question because both of them are strong for different reasons. If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, there's not one player skill-wise that you're like, hey, man, like that's the guy we're prepping for. They're great as a unit. Juju Smith-Schuster only had a couple catches in the AFC Championship game against the Bills, but those were critical catches when they had to have them. Same with DeAndre Hopkins. Same with Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy picks and chooses his spots, and they're really effective with him. They pick their moments to use him. Kareem Hunt has just been churning and churning and churning. When they need 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, like they need it, they're going to go to Kareem Hunt. He's going to get it. He's a heavy back, and he's been winning for him. And then you got Travis Kelce, and he says he's not retiring anytime soon because he's having a lot of fun. He's going to be a factor in this game, and he's a safety blanket for Patrick Mahomes. And when they get into rhythm, these moments aren't too big. They're still in the backyard. And then you get Andy Reid schematically. I don't care what anybody says. There's still some anger and some frustration. There's still some revenge aspect to this for Andy Reid, I'm sure, because he's an all-time winningest coach in the Philadelphia Eagles history. They said, hey, we need to move on from you. Respect. They've gone to a Super Bowl. They've won a Super Bowl since then with Doug Peterson and Nick Foles. Cool. Andy Reid has had a tremendous amount of success in Kansas City, and I'm sure just at some level, this means more to him. And playing against this team means more to him. He may never say it. He's a classy guy. He's one of the greatest coaches of all times. But there's that emotional element that, hey, this means more to him. He's going to scheme these guys up. He schemed everybody else up. It's not going to be anything super extravagant. They're just going to be death by 1,000 cuts. They don't have the super dynamic speedster. They don't have Rashee Rice, the guy who was starting to develop into their number one receiver. But they have a lot of guys by committee that are going to be really, really effective in their own unique ways, whether it's screen game, short game, quick game, against pressure. You see Mahomes is very comfortable. Hey, pressure's in his face. It's a hot route. His receivers always know where he's going, where he's looking, who he's going to. And he always seems to have poise under duress in these moments. So I think athletically, talent-wise, you'd be more concerned with the Philadelphia Eagles because, like I said, there's just talent all over the place. They have a great offensive line. They have the best running back in football. They have a really good quarterback who can freaking take over the game with his legs, with his arm. They have a really good tight end. A.J. Brown, one of the best receivers in the National Football League. Devontae Smith, a guy who could be a number one on other teams. And then that's a tough ask for anybody. That's as good as it gets in the National Football League. They're strong in every aspect. There's no weakness in their scheme or in their offense. That's why we always say, hey, you got to just pick your poison with this team. And either way, you're probably going to die. You're probably going to lose, but you just got to figure out which way you're trying to lose. But it's just different when you're playing Patrick Mahomes and these boys. And we've seen that time and time again. This ain't no little itty bitty teeny tiny bowl. This is Super Bowl 59. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59. Scoring touchdowns is key to hoisting the Lombardi Trophy, and you have a shot by betting on them at DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score 6. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the promo code RICHARD. That's code RICHARD for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's 7 for 7 on game-winning or game-tying drives in his playoff career. Would you say, is there a better playoff performer in the clutch than Patrick Mahomes? I know a lot of love has got to be shown to Tom Brady and his success, but I mean, it's getting to the point where we have to have a conversation about it.
No question it's getting to that point, but the hard part about that conversation is always going to be Tom beat him twice when Tom was at the end. So I know, look, I want to put him in that GOAT conversation, but that's just understand it's going to be a hard battle to win no matter how many Super Bowls he wins, because even if he gets to 7, people will say, well, Tom beat him at like 43 and like 45, like or 42 and 43 or something like that. Like 43 years old, he beat him in the Super Bowl and he beat him in the playoffs in the NFC or AFC Championship. So at the end of the day, head-to-head matchups will come into to factor. And It's not like Mahomes was young when they played the second time. It was like, hey, Mahomes had already won a Super Bowl. They beat us in 19, and then he beat him in 20. That's what happened. So he's definitely one of the all-time calmest. He executes. He's accurate. Um, he always seems to make the right play, whether it's with his arm or with his legs. And I know people have gotten on the Chiefs about, oh man, the refs. Yeah, that's a storyline. That's a storyline. That's something that everybody seems to see and everybody seems to agree on, even if they can't agree on which team is the best or who's their favorite player. It seems like there's a general consensus outside of Kansas City that there's some benefit from the refs. It is what it is at this point. Nobody's going to remember that storyline if they win the third championship. Nobody's going to be like, oh man, the refs gave them to them. We're going to put an asterisk. Like there was a whole deflate gate and everything associated with the Patriots, and nobody talks about it really anymore. They just talk about, hey, Tom Brady has 7 of them. Like history doesn't remember things like that. So that's why I don't spend a lot of time talking about it, because it doesn't matter. That's not the way history is going to be remembered. So his greatness and how he's executed down the stretch is something that should be studied and should be appreciated in the moment in real time, because that's really what's happening. He's in very tough, critical moments. He's executing at a really high level. Even in that Super Bowl we played against him, 21 unanswered points. He played really great football, delivered some really great passes down the stretch. That's what helped this team win games. Now, he only threw for, 182 yards or so, or 187 or something in this first game, but he threw for 3 touchdowns. Like, he made the right plays, and I think that's another thing that makes this team hard to beat. They don't really care how they beat you. They're not looking for no number one receiver. Hey, we got to get this guy the ball. We got to throw it to him. We got to feed this guy. However we get it done is how we're getting it done.
Let's talk a little bit about the Super Bowl itself. You've obviously experienced it 3 separate times, Rich. I know the old cliche is, hey, it's just another game, right? But is it really just another game? Like, how much extra nerves are going through you when you're approaching as the week goes on and you get closer and closer and closer to Sunday? What's going through some of these guys' minds right now?
I don't know. Everybody's different. I can't speak for everybody. I can speak from my experience and some of my teammates. You try to keep your routines the same. And I think that's what the teams try to do. They try to get you, but everything's actually different. You try to keep the things that you can control the same. Your cleats, how you put your uniform on, what gloves you wear, how you warm up. But in reality, you're in a locker room you're not familiar with, whether it's a college or NFL locker room. We were in a college locker room for 2 of them, which sucks. We were at University of Miami and Arizona State, I want to say. We were for one of them. And then the other one, we were at the Giants facility. And so you're just getting used to that. You're getting used to that. Then you have things that are out of your control that are mandates. You have the NFL Media Day. That's a circus. And if you're a bigger time player, you get a desk and there's all these cameras and all these questions. And it's so outside of your routine that you just try to ground yourself each day with, hey, if you study film at home, then you study film now. If you chill and you have, you have this kind of meal, try to have that kind of meal. If you go out to eat with your family every week and you have date night with your wife on Tuesdays, try to go have date night with your wife on Tuesdays, because you want to keep it as normal as you can, because it's chaotic. Because if you let the chaos get to you, then your mind gets chaotic and things start happening too fast. You get too many things on your mind. Hey, I got to get Super Bowl tickets for here. I got to go put these people in hotel rooms. I got to do this. And then you get distracted. And I think that happens to some players in their first go round. But I think that's another reason why Kansas City is in such a great position, because this is just old hat to them. Some of these players, McDuffie and Jalen Watson, have never known anything else. All they know is, hey, we played the NFL season, we go to the Super Bowl, and then we deal with the Super Bowl, we win the Super Bowl, and then we go home, and then we do the offseason. Like, they don't know how to do an offseason any earlier than February. That's crazy. And as an organization, the Kansas City Chiefs have been to so many Super Bowl that it's almost second nature. They know who to call. They know to book the hotels. They probably booked hotels in New Orleans last season, which is crazy.
Would make sense.
I mean, why not? I mean, we're back-to-back champions. We got to assume we're going back. They know They know the how to go through the mechanics of being in a Super Bowl. And there are players with the Philadelphia Eagles. Lane Johnson's been there before. Jalen Hurts been there. Both A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Big Play Slay. Like, they have a lot of the same guys on this team that have been to the Super Bowl, but then they got a lot of new faces. Both sides do. And there's some aspects of that. And New Orleans is a different city. You know, do players get distracted? Some players may choose to go out and go party, you know, early in the week. Some players may choose to stay in. And I think a team that's experienced like the Kansas City Chiefs is going to stay in. They're going to do their work. And I think the veteran players on the Philadelphia Eagles will alert and lead the guys to say, hey, stay in. Like, this is a serious week. We doing all this. And then y'all could go have a good time at another time. I think that's the part that you got to combat and that you got to focus on, is trying to keep the young guys who do like to have a good time to understand the seriousness of the moment.
Literally, I mean, you can have a good time next week, and you can have a championship ring on your finger because of it. Richard, you're seasoned in this, and like you said, the Kansas City Chiefs have been here every year. I'm sure they've got their hotel booked in Santa Clara for next year as well. But this Eagles team is not far removed from the Super Bowl appearance themselves, so this is a matchup that is much-see football. Richard, you faced some absolute Goliaths in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, you know, Peyton Manning. What did you see? I mean, obviously you beat Peyton, you lost to Brady and Mahomes. Like, was there a different animal that came out in these guys in the Super Bowl than you're used to seeing in regular season?
No, I mean, I don't think it's a different animal. You know what I mean? It's just the precision. It's the precision of execution, and it's on all levels. And I think that's what it comes down to when you're playing these great quarterbacks. I wish I could play some other quarterbacks in a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? I wish I could play like a non-top 5 all-time quarterback in a Super Bowl. That would have been really great. That would have been really fun. Like, hey, give me anybody. Anybody else. Anybody other
Brad Johnson from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Brad
Rich.
Johnson. Love it.
There you
I would
go.
have had a great time. Give me Rich Gannon. I'm sorry. You know, no offense to Rich, but you're not Tom or Peyton or Mahomes. I would take Rich Gannon. I'd love we'd have a good time playing Rich Gannon. No, we'd have a good time playing just about anybody but those guys. We played Aaron all the time in the NFC Championship. So, but that's the hard part, is when they're that great, you know, you have to be that great and you have to be that buttoned up and you have to be on the screws, because one mistake here, one mistake there, and it's game. And it's game, and they're going to make the right play. Like, it's like leaving Steph Curry open. He's going to make the shot. No, you don't even have to, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. Hey, you left him open. That's 3. Like, hey, you made the mistake. Yes, that's a catch. Hey, you guessed wrong. Yep, that's a touchdown. Like, you know what it is. So you have to be really smart, understand, detailed in your preparation. And that's why it's tough to beat those guys. You know what I mean? I felt like we had Tom beat, and then, you know, we gave up some plays in the second half. You know, we had some injuries. Jeremy Lane got hurt, and, you know, some guys gave up some catches, and unfortunately, you know, we threw the ball at the one that got intercepted, and they came away with that game. But throughout the game, you could see the gamesmanship. You could see the chess match of it, you know, back and forth. You could see our adjustments, their adjustments. You know, Cliff Averill got hurt. That changed some things. Mike Bennett was having a great game. They were trying to double team him, but they couldn't with Cliff there. And there were so many aspects of that game that changed. Cam got hurt, so we couldn't guard Gronk with Cam. We had to put KJ on him. He had a couple catches on KJ. You know, it was different things that changed in that game that changed day of. You know, that Cam, we practiced all week to guard Gronk, and then there's an injury happened the day before the game. So those are the things and adjustments that you have to make in real time against these great players, and you know they're going to notice it. With Peyton, they were running the hurry up so much. And our plan was like, hey, we're just going to be more conditioned than these guys. We're going to hit them really hard. We're going to make them quit. We're going to make them tap their helmets and sub out of the game. And we took pride in that. We took pride every single time their receivers tapped their helmets and went out the game. Every time, you know, Wes, and rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas and Decker tapped their helmets and went out to the sideline during the drive, that was a win. And we were standing there on the sideline clapping and looking at them like, hey, you guys are quitters. Y'all aren't built to beat us. If y'all got to tap out of the Super Bowl and go get a drink of water, you don't deserve to beat us. And so it's a different kind of intensity for the Super Bowl for both sides. And I think that's what's the best part about it. You know, obviously you got the pageantry and the cameras and all the flashes, but once the ball's kicked off, You know, both of these teams know each other like the back of their hands. They know every single thing that they've done. I know exactly what you do well, what you don't do well. I know the plays you're going to run. I know what likely you're going to run in your first 15 plays. Now it's about who's going to execute. It's not about tricking anybody. It's about knowing the other team really well and then out executing them.
Let's talk a little bit more about the Kansas City Chiefs, because a lot more is at stake for this organization than just winning a Super Bowl. This could be a three-peat. Richard, if they are able to accomplish what seems to be the impossible, winning 3 consecutive Super Bowls, would this make Kansas City the best dynasty ever? I mean, I almost want to bring that conversation to independent of sports, because winning 3 Super Bowls in a row, it's a lot different than having a LeBron on your team in basketball and marching to the NBA Finals every year. Football is just different. Like, how big would a three-peat be for the Kansas City Chiefs?
It'd be huge, and just because of how they did it, and the teams they went against while doing it. You know, we talk about that Philadelphia Eagles team. That's a really, I think they almost broke the record for sacks that season. That D-line was really incredible. Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick. They had Javon Hargraves. They had so many guys. Fletcher Cox was on that team, and there's so much talent on that team that they beat. And then you go back to last season, the San Francisco 49ers and Christian McCaffrey, Offensive Player of the Year, Kyle Shanahan, that offense, and then Nicholas John Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year on the other side. Really talented defense. Fred Warner, the All-Pro, George Kittle. We can talk about all the weapons, Brandon Ayuk and all those guys, and they found a way to beat those. And if you look at it and you say, hey, what All-Pros do they have in their receiving core or their skill positions offensively? And you're not going to find a lot. DeAndre Hopkins was one of the best receivers in the league at one point, but, he's not all he used to be. Is he still really effective? No question about it. Xavier Worthy is a good, fast receiver, but he's young and still has some growing to do, some developing to do. You don't look at their offensive skills and skill positions and say, oh, man, this is one of the best. They're going to be in a Super Bowl every year. And they've done it different ways. When they lost Tyreek Hill, they adjusted. When they lost Rashee Rice this season to an injury, they adjusted. And they just keep adjusting to the tune of 15-2 during the regular season. And then you look on the other side. You obviously got Patrick Mahomes, but defensively, they just keep homegrown talent. They get a few free agents here and there, but they're mostly homegrown guys. You talk about drafting Karlaftis and McDuffie and Jalen Watson, and they just have continued. Chris Jones has been a menace there for a long time, and they do it with the guys that they picked up. And I think that's the reason it'll be so special, is because you're not talking about like some super teams. These aren't super teams where you're like, hey, honestly, Philadelphia might be more talented, like player for player, in terms of star power and what they've accomplished. And, if you look at their resumes, you'd say, hey, offensively, Philly might have the edge. Offensive line wise, it'd be hard to argue that. You got a Pro Bowl wide receiver. You got the Dallas Goedert, who could easily be a Pro Bowler. You got multiple Pro Bowlers, Hall of Famer on the line, all pros on the line. You got the best back in football. You got a quarterback who's been to multiple Pro Bowls, played great in the Super Bowl. And for them to three-peat, that's pretty incredible. And it's hard to do in football with the injuries, the unpredictability of it all, man. It'd probably be one of the most impressive things in sports. Obviously their sports is a long, wide-ranging, and it depends on who you ask, but that's my opinion.
You're right. This Kansas City Chiefs team just doesn't skip a beat. I mean, they lose guys. They're kind of starting to remind me a little bit of the New England Patriots. They lose guys inevitably. L'Jarius Sneed was a cap casualty this year, and everyone thought, hey, maybe they're going to take a step back defensively. That's not the case. And I know you just had Jalen Watson on the podcast. I mean, this secondary with the Chiefs, these are a bunch of 7th-round picks. That doesn't just happen. That's got to be something with coaching. And that's why Andy Reid, to me, is starting to enter this conversation as one of the greatest coaches of all time in the NFL. Certainly Bill Belichick, I would assume, takes the cake right now. But Andy Reid has taken 2 separate organizations to the Super Bowl. He's one of only a handful of coaches to do that. And for him, if he can pull off the three-peat here, Rich, what does that mean to his coaching legacy? Would you put him on the Mount Rushmore of coaches with that three-peat?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a hard time arguing anything else. It's never been done in the sport. So the coach that has led his team to the promised land in that way, I mean, would that be his fourth Super Bowl in Kansas City alone? Um, I think that puts him up there. I think that definitely puts him up there, being a coach that led the three-peat. I mean, offensive minds, he's up there as one of the best. And I think anybody that argues anything else would have a hard time putting together evidence to disprove that Andy Reid's one of the best coaches in the National Football League's history. He's lost offensive coordinators. Eric Bieniemy left, brought Matt Nagy in. He hasn't missed a beat. He continues to do what he's done. And I think that's really important. He's done it in Philadelphia. Again, all-time winningest coach in Philadelphia Eagles history, all-time winningest coach in Kansas City Chiefs history, along with the Super Bowls. I think that speaks for itself.
Let's get down to it. It's prediction time. You're going to make one fan base upset again, Richard, but that's what we do here. Who do you got taking the cake? Who do you have hosting the Lombardi at the end of the day on Sunday? Is it the Kansas City Chiefs or the Philadelphia Eagles?
Like I said, if you go player for player, and Philadelphia Eagles fans get mad because I don't pick their team, is what it is. They're a great team. They really are. They're one of if not the most talented team in the National Football League. And Tony Gonzalez said it all season on Thursday night. I'm sure they love that. But until you beat the champs, I got to go with the champs. And this is no slight against Kansas City, because I would think there's a number of ways they can win this game. They could win them straight up. They could control the game the entire time. But just betting against the Kansas City Chiefs right now, because I'm picking against them in the other two Super Bowls and they've won them. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it this time. I'm not going to do it because they've always found a way. They keep finding a way. And this season is the epitome embodies everything they've done. They have just found a way. They haven't really blown teams out. They haven't scored over 30 points in any of the regular season games, and they just found a way. Hey, defensively, we're going to make a play. Offensively, we're going to make a play. Like, somebody's going to make a play for them. And the Philadelphia Eagles have won in a variety of ways, but they have leaned a lot on Saquon Barkley in that defense. Jalen Hurts, when he's needed to perform, has performed really well and thrown really accurate passes and helped his team use his legs when it's time. And I think that's going to be a factor in this game. But it's just hard for me to pick against the Kansas City Chiefs when they just have not lost. They do not lose Super Bowl games. Kansas City, I mean, Patrick Mahomes have only lost 3 games in his entire career in the playoffs, 20 games played. So for me to bet against that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Even though I think the Philadelphia Eagles can easily win this game, I can't bet against Kansas City. So I'm going with Kansas City.
The Philadelphia Eagle fans, just be nice, guys. Come on.
They're
Richard
not going to be nice, Mitchell.
Enough good things about you in this podcast, so just be nice. Well, it's going to be one to watch on Sunday. We got some other news to talk about in the NFL, because for whatever reason, the NFL has turned it into the NBA this offseason, I guess, if you want to call it that already. Myles Garrett officially requests a trade. Cooper Kupp is being notified that the LA Rams are going to be trading him. Let's start with Myles Garrett, because this guy arguably is the best defensive player in football right now, still in his prime at 29 years old. He's got a very reasonable cap hit for the next 2 years for whatever team he plays for. But then after that, there's going to be a massive extension that's going to be signed. So getting a trade done for Myles Garrett is easier said than done. My Detroit Lions are rumored to be in the conversations. You see the Dallas Cowboys, the LA Chargers, the Green Bay Packers. The list goes on and goes on and goes on. Richard, well, what do you make of this Myles Garrett situation? Where do you most likely see him ending up?
Well, it's not strange, because he's a human being, and he works his butt off, and he's played at a high level, and the results for whatever reason just have not been there. There's been, they thought they got the quarterback of the future with Deshaun Watson. That didn't end up being the case. And he's just been there through a lot of turmoil, and he's still come to work and played at a high level. So I think in his mind, he feels like, I'm owed this. Like, I deserve to have the ability to play for championships. I've done everything right by this franchise. I've given you everything you've asked for and more, and it hasn't worked out. With that being said, there's only a couple teams that I think have obviously, I think his cap hits are only like $6.5 million right now because the way his contract's structured. Um, David Lombardi did a great, segment on it, talking about the Super Bowl and all that. But I think obviously the Green Bay Packers would make sense. If you're trying to go to a winning team, a culture that just needs a little bit more on defense, just needs another big time playmaker, that would make sense. The Detroit Lions, he'd be a game wrecker, and to pair him opposite of your guy would just, I mean, it would take them to the next level. And selfishly, do the Seattle Seahawks or San Francisco 49ers make a move? I'm not sure. I know Seattle has just a lot of guys right now. Obviously, anywhere he'd go, he'd help. They just have a lot of defensive linemen right now and a lot of guys in the rotation, and he's not a rotational guy. He's not a guy that comes off the field ever. And so that just be an adjustment. San Francisco, I don't know what the cap situation would look like, or if he wants a long-term extension. I'm sure, John Lynch is always making calls and always on listening and trying to make deals. Would they be willing to give up that 11th pick to get him? That'd be the conversation. I'm sure that's where it would start for the Cleveland Browns, along with a number of other players, probably a starter. I'm not sure if that's feasible. Can a team like the Dallas Cowboys maybe make that move? I'm not sure, because you haven't paid Micah Parsons yet, but would that make them a real start to make them a real contender and put them in that conversation? No question about it. I would say, a team like the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, that, oh my God, you pair him with Trey Henderson, and that changes them. Doesn't matter what you're doing in the secondary, they can't get the ball off. But I don't think the Browns trade within the division. I think that's not something they do. And when you're talking about contenders, there's only a handful of contenders. It depends on what he's thinking and where he really wants to go. And again, if the Cleveland Browns even want to trade him, that's a big part of it. Like, if they don't want to trade him, they're just going to say no, and then it's going to be an ugly situation.
Well, the other part of it too, especially, using Detroit as a hypothetical, you got a Lions team that's obviously would be interested in theory in adding Myles Garrett, but you got these looming questions with all these young studs that you drafted that are due for a big pay raise in 2 years. Is a guy like Myles Garrett, worth investing in now, knowing that in the future you're going to run into a little bit of cap hell?
Right. Like, are you willing to sign up for that? And for some team, he may just be a temporary rental. Like, maybe he's a 2-year rental, and then you let him walk in free agency. Is he okay with that? And is the team okay with that? Like, some teams, yeah, I'm sure there are teams that are okay with that. It'd be a wild scenario, but if he somehow stumbles and ends up with the Kansas City Chiefs, I think that's the worst possible scenario for the entire league. So I'm just putting that out there.
That would be the Luka Doncic trade all over again, Richard. Let's talk a little bit about Cooper Kupp. He's allegedly going to be traded this offseason, and there was some speculation going into the trade deadline this past year that Kupp was a potential trade candidate for the LA Rams, and now we see the truth to that matter taking effect. Are you surprised by this at all with Cooper Kupp? I mean, to me, it seems like you saw Puka Nacua really take a lot of his touch share from him, specifically the last 6 weeks of the season. You didn't see a whole lot from Cooper Kupp. Does this shock you at all?
Not really. I mean, the writing was kind of on the wall. Did I think, hey, would they show him some loyalty because he's been there, triple count rented guy that's done everything right, works his butt off, plays the game the right way? Sure. But they've also shown the ability to make trades when needed. And again, Puka Nacua has become Matt Stafford's go-to guy. Obviously, they're moving in a different direction. They think very highly of Tutu Atwell and what he can do as a true, complementary piece, number 2 receiver, and it clears up some cap space for him. And so I think it'll be amicable, and they'll try to put him in a place that, he can be successful. I don't think they're trying to ship him off to Siberia or anything like that. But it's sad because obviously he wants to be there.
We got to talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl, the week before the Super Bowl. At this point in time, Richard, is the Pro Bowl even worth it? Should guys just be honored for being named Pro Bowlers and the NFL just abandon the Pro Bowl altogether? Because it's just becoming so gimmicky now. You're seeing guys with mascot heads trying to catch footballs. I mean, I like the whole element of flag football. I think that's really cool. But then you get guys like Drake May, who are made the Pro Bowl this year. That great quarterback, certainly got a great future. But there's no way you can sit here and justify him being a Pro Bowler. What are your thoughts on the Pro Bowl as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. I didn't watch it. I don't watch it. I think it's a waste of time at this point. I don't think it's doing the ratings, but I think the NFL feels like they have to do something because it's a big, it's obviously it's one of the biggest sports in America. And I think the skills challenge and all that stuff is fun. It used to be more fun back in the day. I always looked forward to watching it. And I thought, hey, man, when I get to the NFL, I can't wait to play in the Pro Bowl. And get to go to Hawaii and do all that and get to live like those guys live. And then I made the Pro Bowl, and then they switched it to the week before the Super Bowl. And so I didn't get to play in 3 of the Pro Bowls that I made. And so it's kind of a sore spot for me. But I think it's ridiculous. Either play the football game or go away with it and just give the guys the accolade. The skills challenge and all that is fun and cool. It could be a part of the actual Pro Bowl game. Hey, got the skills challenge, do all this, longest throw. It used to be a part of it. Fastest man, longest throw, all that stuff, and then play the game. Obviously, contracts and injuries, and we're, a very violent game. So, guys are trying to protect each other, keep each other safe, get to the offseason safe. Nobody's trying to end anybody's career or ruin anybody's offseason. So, it's going to be a tough place to navigate, but either you got to get rid of it. I mean, the flag football thing just doesn't it doesn't make sense. I guess with it being in the Olympics in a couple of years, there's some allure there, but it's just not a fun game to watch when you know what guys are capable of, especially as a defensive player. It's like these guys are elusive enough to bring down. Now you got to try to take a flag from them. Like, no thanks.
I got one final topic we got to touch on because it shocked the sports world this weekend. Totally unrelated to NFL, but we're going to relate it the best we can. Luka Doncic got traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the LA Lakers. And an absolute shocker. You're trading Luka Doncic in his prime at 25 years old for 31, soon to be 32-year-old Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first-round pick. NBA aside, Rich, my only question is this. This trade is bonkers. What NFL equivalent trade would you say would be on the same level as this Luka Doncic trade?
That's interesting. I think the NFL equivalent would be, because they're on the same side, so it got to be somebody either NFC, AFC, because the Mavs should never do business with the Lakers. They're going to eventually have to play them to ever get to anywhere. This would be like, I guess they're not in the same division, though. This would be like Josh Allen getting traded to Pittsburgh for TJ Watt and a pick in a second. I think that'd be the equivalent for me. TJ is about 30. I mean, still really, dynamic player, really effective. But Josh Allen for TJ Watt in a second, that probably send similar ripples through the sports world if it happened. Yeah.
I would not doubt that for a second. Well, hey, this concludes our Super Bowl preview. Richard, I'll let you sign us off, my friend.
Well, we appreciate you guys joining us all season long for this content. This is obviously our Super Bowl preview. We'll do a Super Bowl summary after the game is concluded, but we really appreciate you guys week after week stopping in to spend time with us, to listen to our commentary. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we sure do appreciate it. Have a beautiful, blessed day. See you next time. Hit that sub button if you're new.